The picture superiority effect is a principle that's essentially built around the idea that pictures can convey much more information, much more context, much more nuance, much more meaning than text and words by themselves. And how this is a very powerful tool to help you reduce anxiety and nervousness stems from the idea that we often think about the idea that we're going to forget. We're going to forget what we're going to say, so we have lots and lots of notes. We have our papers close by. We put a lot of copy and text on our slides so we don't forget things. We use those as cues. But where we can take the picture superiority effect and use that to our advantage is simply by incorporating more pictures and images into our slides. If we put them in there intentionally to use them as triggers for our memory, it will help us remember the content of the material that we're trying to give to people without showing people everything that we're trying to remember by just bombarding them with text. So a very simple strategy, again, is to put more pictures and images into your slides, not necessarily just for your audience, but to help you remember the content of what you're trying to get across. At some time or another, you've probably seen a member of the armed forces wearing their formal dress uniform, crisply ironed, looking sharp. And that individual who's wearing that outfit or that uniform looks confident, looks powerful, looks really, really self-assured. That is the power of clothing. There is a term called enclosed cognition. I'll say it again, enclosed cognition. And essentially what it is an idea or a concept that is backed by research that supports the idea that the clothing that we wear shapes how we perceive the world and how we interact with it. And therefore, being very selective in the terms of the clothing that we choose to wear can impact how we feel and thereby how we interact and conduct ourselves in the public. And that could be in a presentation, at work, in a speech, or any one of these types of situations. And so if you're a person who's feeling nervous or anxious or feeling uncomfortable about speaking in public situations, a very simple place to start is by selecting clothes that make you feel confident. And this could be clothes that you wear to an interview, a set of clothing that you might wear to an evening event, a formal evening event, that just makes you feel strong and comfortable. And that will influence how your body feels, and that in turn will influence how you interact with the world around you. And that's just a simple, powerful tool that you can use to help quell some of that nervousness and anxiety and shape the emotions that you feel and ultimately the message that you project to others of confidence. Expect to do well. Seems pretty obvious, but you've probably been in a situation where you've muttered to yourself, either verbally or muttered in your mind, where you're thinking, oh, I'm going to screw this up. This is going to go terribly. I'm not going to do well. This is going to go awful. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. And that inner voice, that inner monologue, that inner conversation where you're essentially approaching the situation like you're going to fail will dramatically increase your chance to fail. There is research that supports the idea that our expectations impact our outcomes. And so just like a placebo effect, if we have positive outcomes, if we start believing that the outcome of our presentation or our talk is going to be good, that we've done the preparation, then it's going to dramatically increase the likelihood that we do well. And part of that has to do with the fact that when we have positive expectations, our brain releases the feel-good hormone, dopamine. And when dopamine gets released, it helps us essentially quell the negative effects of the human stress response that kick in this type of a situation, in a mental stressful situation. And it makes us feel a little bit euphoric because dopamine can essentially makes us feel good. And this is a very simple strategy that we can embrace, that we can take on to rethink how we approach our communications, how we approach these difficult situations by just having positive expectations. So the next talk you have that you think you're going to do badly, right before it, Just give yourself a little bit of positive self-talk where you're saying to yourself, this is going to go well, this is going to go well, this is going to go well. All right? But hey, one thing I have to add to that is don't be delusional. If you didn't do your practice, then chances are it's probably not going to do well. Reset your thinking. Just simply that. Reset your thinking. I'm a big believer that if you can change your mindset, you can transform your perspective, and then once you transform your perspective, that will influence and transform the actions that you make, how you interact with the world. And so if you want to be an individual who overcomes a lot of the anxiety and the fear that comes with speaking, the place to start is within your mind. Now there's multiple different ways you can do this. One such way that's backed by research is just to reframe the jitters that you feel in your body as excitement. Because what the research shows is that when we start feeling the jitters, if we just simply start telling ourselves, trying to view it as simply that those jitters are actually excitement, it can lower our levels of stress and anxiety just by that simple mental shift. Another mental shift that I would challenge you to think about, and that really worked wonders for me, is to start thinking about the whole presentation, the whole speech, the whole speaking engagement is not about you. It is completely about the audience. It's about them. It's your gift. It's your way to help the audience better themselves. They are paying you with their time and their attention. And what you are doing is that you are essentially honoring them, teaching them by giving them something of value. And that simple shift in mindset, taking it off of you, about it being about you, and so that gets rid of your fear of being judged, that gets rid of your fear of screwing up. If you start thinking about it's about them and not you, then all of a sudden a lot of the stress and the pressure is taken off you. Another mental mindset that I would encourage you to think about is the idea that you cannot forget what you're going to say. And the reason being is the audience doesn't know what you're going to say, so you can't possibly forget that. And the last kind of mental shift that I would encourage you to think about is the idea that the audience wants you to succeed. Now, oftentimes stand-up comedy, with that, people often attribute that to the audience wanting the comedian to fail because there's some humor in that, the comedian completely bombing. However, when you give a talk, when you give a presentation, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the audience is investing their time, and there's an opportunity cost with that time, and that opportunity cost is what they could have gotten from using that time for some other pursuit or some other activity. And so because they're there listening to you, they want you to succeed. And that, simply believing that and knowing that, all of a sudden, well, that transforms how you approach this, because they're essentially they're your cheerleaders. And those are a few strategies to really kind of embrace and think about, so that it transforms your mindset, which will transform how you perceive and see these things, these talks and these anxiety-ridden situations, and that will influence the actions and behaviors that you end up taking. Ultimately, the best way to overcome any type of fear that you have of public speaking, of presenting in front of others, is to get really, really, really good at public speaking. And in that act of practice, of getting really, really good, your confidence will get better and better and better and higher and higher and higher, because you've exposed yourself to more and more scenarios, so that there'll be very few things that catch you off guard, that make you uncomfortable, because seeing that you've experienced it before, in your mind, you'll know how to deal with it. And that will give you a fair amount of confidence. Now, when it comes to preparing and practicing, I really want to express this idea that there is a fundamental difference between regular practice and deliberate practice. And for you to really elevate your communication game, it requires you to shift more towards deliberate practice versus regular practice. And let me illustrate the difference between the two. So I used to work at a baseball academy in the Dominican Republic, and one of the tools that we used to help baseball players become better and better at their craft, especially the hitters, was to incorporate an element of deliberate practice. And this is how it essentially worked. You'd have a batting cage, which is it's an enclosed structure, right? That's essentially built out of fencing on the top, on the sides, and on one side you have the batter, on the other side you have a pitcher. Now, regular practice essentially is the following. the pitcher throws the ball, the batter swings, they hit or they miss. Either way, the next ball comes and the next ball comes and the next ball comes. And over time, through that just repetition-based training, practice, they will get better up until a point. Deliberate practice adds one other element into the training regimen, the training protocol, and that is a moment of reflection, a moment of feedback. So imagine the same scenario. The pitcher throws the ball, the batter swings, hits or they miss. They take a moment to reflect. If they hit the ball, they ask themselves, okay, what made me hit it? So that I can try to replicate that, and that's going to increase my chance of hitting it again next time. Or if they miss it, the batter reflects and goes, okay, what could I do next time to ensure that perhaps I hit it? And is that moment of reflection that you think about, or you get external feedback from a coach, a friend, a trusted advisor, that will dramatically elevate the training and the practice so you become better, faster, and to a higher level. And it is through that development of your practice, your deliberate practice, that you will, through confidence and through reps, become much more easily able to quell any of that fear or that discomfort or that anxiety that comes up from speaking in public.